As my creative work is progressing and I'm immersing myself within it, I'm noticing an increase in my core vibration, which manifests itself like some liquid within my consciousness that imbues its content with a sense of purpose, blotting out the conditioned mind. I believe that this is a very basic, very simple expression of the complexity of how I feel in this moment. I believe that this is the first phase of growing up into the role of a galactic citizen. This process is founded on many individual spiritual awakenings that manifest like the cracks in the egg from which the hatchling tries to break free. In a way, I'm breaking out of my own polarized prison. Matt from Planet Phoenix podcast on YouTube asked me what I mean by living on a polarized prison planet. That was something I didn't expect and thought that I had made that abundantly clear, but unfortunately I didn't. Oh well, I am reminded yet again that we are all works in progress and our perceptions are sometimes clouded by what we believe. In this case, my own perception was clouded by what I believe to be self-explanatory. Not really, apparently. It's not that Earth is a galactic prison planet. No, on the contrary, it is a playground where free will is encouraged. We are feeling the weight of the choices we make while experiencing and manifesting different viewpoints and perspectives on Earth that are teaching us about the greater, wider existence that we are part of. It's just that not everybody feels that they have this opportunity to be truly free because of the rigidness of the conditioned mind and the ego. Simply put, but increasingly challenging to get in its whole extent due to ego's subconscious as well as unconscious interference in our reality perception. The concept of the polarized prison planet refers to the fact that we have all imprisoned ourselves within a self-made prison of our own devices. The conditioned mind. That prison is unique to each one of us, made up of individual belief systems that our ego has created throughout our different lifetimes. These belief systems, just like the ego, evolve uniquely in each lifetime we experience and are the result of the rudimentary process we undergo while living on Earth, to gather all parts of our consciousness as an incomplete and emerging aspect of unity consciousness. This incompleteness is causing within us feelings of separation from each other, and we are therefore forcefully inclined to polarize on a specific viewpoint, whatever that may be, to the exclusion of others. We have specific, rigid viewpoints that are the result of our own belief systems we have in life, that formed based intimately on the unique internal consciousness landscape within us. Other humans on Earth may have different belief systems, and this creates friction through polarization. We all think that we know better. The ego's polarization stems from a fragmented internal consciousness landscape that doesn't allow the emergence of neither the openness nor the acceptance that is necessary to perceive and combine all viewpoints, both ours and theirs. Hence, we all live on a polarized prison planet, or a PPP to remember it easier. Thank you, Matt, for showing me the need to elaborate on that. If we realize that we are all living on a PPP, then we might be more inclined to have an open mind regarding viewpoints and perspectives that don't make sense to us through the mind, and try to grok them with the heart. Every polarized concept has aspects that we might like or dislike. The overall impression and understanding of them is what polarizes us. It is important to note here that polarization occurs within the mind. The heart has no such predicament because it is not tied up by illusionary concepts that immobilize it. Guided by the conditioned mind, we gravitate toward what we like and push away or reject what we don't like. Unfortunately, what we don't recognize in this process is that we don't polarize for and against other humans and their opinions which do or don't reflect ours. We polarize for and against parts of our own self and project this belief onto other humans. Let's take, for example, the concept of origami, which is a sheet of paper that, when folded and sometimes partially pulled apart, reveals a three-dimensional shape. Or a paper fortune teller, also called a cootie catcher. A folded paper device that, when the sides are pulled apart, reveals different pictures or messages, giving the impression of a little 3D window of possibilities. Or a paper accordion, concertina, a thin strip of paper folded back and forth. When the folds are pulled apart, the strip can extend to a meter or more while the alternating pleats give it a three-dimensional, wave-like shape. It's a common, inexpensive party prop that can be stored compactly and then unzipped into a long 3D ribbon-like form. All these examples live within us. They are a multidimensional implementation of universal consciousness that resides as a fractal core from which our own consciousness emerges as a drop from the sea of consciousness. We project this fractal core of all that is through our true self into the external 3D world, passing through the ego and the conditioned mind as incomplete thoughts and actions, expressing itself from the vantage point of our limited 3D self. The sooner we realize that, the sooner we begin to align our lives with our core frequency. We begin to work on ourselves while having compassion with ourselves, recognizing the value of self-love, not in a narcissistic way, but to support and reassure ourselves. Alleviating stress caused by the conditioned mind should be our priority. We need to release attachments, and the conditioned mind will not allow us to do that if we don't develop our ability to love and support ourselves. The stress from the never-ending struggle for survival, which I'm sure everybody is embroiled in to the degree that applies to each individual situation, must come to an end. This is not about thriving in chaos, although it is certainly possible. It's about increasing our odds of surviving and building a more resilient life in a time of uncertainty through accepting, nurturing, and supporting the self. It's about the conscious shift from being a passive experiencer of circumstances and events to active beings, manifesting our destinies and not accepting them, believing that they are inevitable. This process can be hard work, but incredibly empowering. We were not meant to endure suffering for its own sake. We were meant to become creative in divine time and to wrestle back our own sovereignty from a conditioned mind that has taken a life of its own, like a runaway train, and won't leave us in peace to follow our own heart. Once we have succeeded in lowering the interference from the conditioned mind, by doing what we love and by being how we love, then joy settles in. We feel joy and appreciation when we look at other humans, our loved ones, our coworkers, and people we used to dislike because we are happy ourselves. We understand other humans are here to do and be similar to what we are doing and being. We then focus on how we feel, instead of endlessly worrying about stuff over which we have no control over. We recognize patterns in the current chaos of life that makes it negotiable. We realize that chaos is not a set of unknown and uncontrollable forces in our life. Chaos is merely an accumulation of forces that we don't understand yet. For example, people used to think in the distant past that a storm occurs when humans offend the gods. Today we know that storms are caused by meteorological events and circumstances, and they can be predicted to a certain degree. In time, we will learn more about storms, and perhaps we might be able to control the weather itself. This is food for thought because it means that it can be applied to all chaotic and unknown events in life. Knowledge is liberating. Knowledge is paramount. The conditioned mind can be a metaphor for an ancient human who fears the storm because he or she offended the gods. The conditioned mind causes intense and unreasonable fears, making our lives miserable, when worry may be unwarranted, which is true in many cases. Okay, you might ask, what now? What do we do about that insane, irrational fear? Good question. We should focus on nurturing ourselves and persevere in the face of the unknown. Obviously not during a storm where lives may be at stake, but during everyday situations, where we feel anxiety, for example, facing the unknown in a job interview, when perhaps our survival is at stake, or so we think. Another example could be the state of economy, or the increasing cost of living, or walking alone in a dark alley on a moonless night. The conditioned mind feeds us reasons to fear someone or something, but it never feeds us reasons to feel secure. This is when we must utilize the opportunity to persevere. Every time we do that, we might feel more fear. You might ask, why in God's name should we do something that brings us more fear and anxiety? It is simple because the longer we resist the conditioned mind, the more acute the fear and anxiety become. However, at the same time, the more we resist the conditioned mind, the more resilient we become. The more resilient we become, the less fear we feel over time. Because the conditioned mind will stop pestering us, like somebody becoming tired of knocking on the door and rattling at the doorknob. It is not easy. I know firsthand how aggressive the conditioned mind can be and how insanely intense fear and anxiety can become, but I also know that we can persevere enough to weaken the conditioned mind and its tools, fear and anxiety. As Cicero said, practice makes perfect. Now, the most important step at this time we can do to turbocharge our life is to apply ourselves. After we gained a hard-fought victory over the conditioned mind, life will seem less chaotic because we have recognized options in the chaos. Options mean opportunities to change our lives. It doesn't mean that life is going to be miraculously easy once we have resisted our conditioned mind. No, but in words that could have sprung forth from the conditioned mind, this resistance is giving us a fighting chance to turn our lives around and live by the principles of perseverance and resilience. Again, it is not easy, but it will become easier over time as long we persist. All right, let's come back to the thought of applying ourselves. You might ask what this might have to do with polarization and the conditioned mind. A lot, I would say. Once the conditioned mind is held at bay sufficiently, we can focus on our own evolution, our own betterment, and address all these little or big character flaws we have. With the conditioned mind in charge of our lives, we are not becoming aware of those character flaws and the damage they create while we interact and relate to other beings, and most importantly, how we relate to our own selves. It is easy to understand how character flaws affect our relationships, but we miss a very important fact in the process. The conditioned mind is keeping us from loving and appreciating our own self. Without self-love, we rob ourselves of the foundation of life and the ability to love others appropriately. Just like a solid house needs a strong foundation, so do we need an unshakable belief in ourself, and self-love and self-appreciation will achieve that. We can't love others appropriately and completely without loving and appreciating ourselves. Resisting and gradually weakening and erasing the conditioned mind creates the conditions for the unburdened mind, along with self-empowerment, sovereignty, and a better life through the application of self. The conditioned mind will think, why do you want to learn Chinese? You can't do that. You better focus on your work because soon the performance review is due and your manager will not be happy. Or, you really want to learn how to play the piano? Don't you have enough things to do to care for your family? Or you want to go back to college and study engineering? Aren't you happy with your life as a teacher? The list is endless, and little by little, it is eroding our sense and appreciation of self, creating a disconnect between the self and the ego, as the consciousness focusing authority within us. Applying ourselves is the next logical step in life after we disable and erase the conditioned mind. Learning about ourselves and the aspects of the universe to which we feel most attracted to is something wonderful. Leading the life of a couch potato as I did in the past is not attractive to me anymore. Been there, done that, it's now time for more. We can all apply ourselves and find ways to learn, ways to work on ourselves, and ways to love each other appropriately. Before we know it, we realize that we have jumped off that hamster wheel of life, having broken the chains of the conditioned mind that bound us to it. There is no need to run endlessly on the hamster wheel of life repeating old and outdated programs. Now, the only things that matter are loving ourselves, loving others, and the wisdom we extract from living while we apply ourselves. What else is there?